When I go to glass, it feels good. It's a very different feeling than when you open up TikTok or Instagram or, I don't know, a lot of apps on your phone these days. Like, they don't feel good. You go there and you feel manipulated, or you feel addicted to scrolling or swiping or whatever. And then you go to glass and it's like a very calming experience.
Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 413 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen. I'm your host, Matt Payne, and I'm so glad you're here for another engaging conversation about photography, creativity, and the tools that help us share our work with the world. This week, I'm excited to be joined by Tom Watson, the co-founder of Glass, a photography platform that's making waves in the photography community. If you've ever been frustrated by the noise, algorithms, or lack of artistic focus on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or Flickr, this episode is for you. Glass offers a refreshing alternative built specifically for photographers who value connection, creativity, and a distraction-free experience. In our conversation, Tom and I explore what makes Glass stand out, why it's a game changer for photographers, and how it's setting a new standard for online photography platforms. Whether you're already familiar with Glass or just curious about how to rethink your online photography presence, you're going to love this discussion. Be sure to stick around to hear about a special podcast-only offer. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Tom Watson from Glass. All right, Tom Watson, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, it's great to be here, Matt.
Yeah, and shout out to listener Scott Hacker for kind of making the connection between us. And he's a big evangelist for what we're going to talk about today, which is your platform called Glass. But before we dive into all of that, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about who Tom Watson is.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, so I'm the co-founder of Glass, originally from Oregon. I live in Amsterdam now. Wife, 2 kids, but like probably relevant to this topic, I used to design big social networks, both Facebook and Pinterest, early days on both of those. So we can get into that later. But my background now is, for the last 3.5, almost 4 years now, we've been building and creating Glass, the platform for photographers.
Boom, there you go. And what prompted you to move to Amsterdam?
So I moved to Amsterdam to work for a company called Framer. So they build design tools for other designers. And now actually the product has shifted to be more of a website builder. It's worth checking out. And I was their director of product. When I worked for Facebook, we bought quite a few companies, and one of them was called Sofa, and it was a Dutch design agency. They used to make really great Mac software. This is way back in the day, a little more pre-iPhone era stuff. And I became good friends with a lot of those Dutch guys that came over and started working at Facebook. And 2 of them started the company Framer, and then I came over to be the director of product for that company for a little while. It's actually where I met my co-founder, Stefan Borsche, who's awesome, and he's the CTO and back-end engineer for Glass, and front-end engineer now for Glass. So couldn't have done it without the whole move to Amsterdam, and it's been great.
Yeah, and you had mentioned before we hit the record button that you were at Facebook when they acquired Instagram, and I'm guessing that was quite an interesting time to be at Facebook.
Yeah, it was. So I was at Facebook in 2009 to 2013. I think Facebook acquired Instagram in 2012. My manager for 3 years was Adam Mosseri, who currently runs Instagram. So we go way back there. But at the time, I think Instagram was about 10 or 12 people only when it was purchased. Might have been a few more. The people that were working on Instagram at the time. And when I started at Facebook, there was about 100 people working on the product. There was quite a few more people like at the company, but it was pretty small days and early days. But yeah, I can talk all about that too. Get into it, but yeah.
Yeah, and now it seems like nobody works at Facebook, because if you try to get in touch with anyone to solve a problem, it just goes through some ridiculous AI filter that sends you into these rabbit holes of nonsense.
Yes. There was an email that we had internally, so people would hound you that were friends with you that you could send to kind of get like accelerated support, and it was useful. But you felt a little guilty, like using the cheat code. It was oops at facebook.com. But it was only worked if you had an internal, I think it was at fb.com. It only worked if you had an internal email address. So people asked me after I'd left. I gave it a shot, but it did not go through. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we don't need to talk all about Facebook and everyone's frustration with that product, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about Glass and why photographers should know more about your platform? Because I know I hadn't really heard much about it until I've heard a couple of people talk a little bit about it. So tell us about Glass.
Yeah, so we started it in 2019, but it ended up really kicking off in 2020. And the reason we did it was that we saw the problems with all these other platforms, and it had been a passion of mine since Instagram was acquired, that I knew the direction it was going to head. And I think all photographers kind of look back longingly now sometimes about, those early days of Instagram when I was building audiences and growing and getting all this distribution. And when it was purchased, I knew immediately that it was ultimately going to end up, I would describe it as Facebook 2.0, if you would. Like it's there. And so I felt like Instagram had taken the torch from kind of like the momentum of Flickr and really transferred mobile, like photography, into the mobile space. And I was a big Flickr fan back in the day. Like I was a big user and really enjoyed it. Made a lot of great human connections and community connections on it, and just did a lot of photo walks and just loved that like nerdy group. And I was just fearful of what was going to happen to all of that. And I actually started doing some design work on it, like, and a lot of people do this. This is like, you get kind of like, I can do this. I can design something. And then this was in 2013. And then I kind of got swept up. I had a good friend of mine who's a co-founder of Pinterest, and I ended up going to work for them for 5 years. So it was a bit of a detour, right? Like, but I kept this like flame alive of what we wanted to build and what I wanted to achieve. And then I met Stefan, my co-founder, who I mentioned, at Framer, and it was just like, you also have that passion, you also have that excitement, you're also pumped about this. And so we started, working on it, and the pandemic, gave us all this time to sit. We were just sitting around coding and building and designing for a while.
With nice timing.
It worked out, right? Like, I mean, it's not exactly what but some people baked bread. We made an app and then a platform. So yeah, I mean, we were really into it, really excited about it. But we had a few guiding principles. Since I worked on these big apps, I recognized a few like issues that come into play when you build these things. And a lot of them have to do with raising venture capital. And so I want to like start with that in a big differentiator, because it all plays into many pieces of Glass. But the big one is everyone's like, oh man, there's this awesome free new app and it's like very cool and really exciting, or maybe get some traction and they're like, I'm going to go run to it. But ultimately there's like a few ends to companies like this. You have to grow huge, you have to do all this stuff, and you have to, serve ads and then do a lot of algorithm manipulation. And so I was like, we need to build something very different. And so we were like, we're going to bootstrap this product. And that's a hard road. And we've been on it for a while, but we really love it. And it also meant that we had to have a business model from day one, which meant we had to have subscriptions. And that's controversial in a lot of ways, because people are like, I want, social media is free. And you're like, we're not social media. We want to emphasize that. I would say we're like more like a giant photography club, or social networking in its true sense. Social media is a very different beast, as you can imagine, all about distribution, all about promoting yourself. And so we got really passionate about those sort of tenets. And we also wanted to make sure we built it for photographers. So you kind of have this no ads, no manipulative algorithms, chronological feed, high quality photos, great on every viewport, aka your phone to your desktop screen. Aspect ratio restrictions we want to minimize as much as possible. We want the photography to really...
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We still get complaints, but we do 3x1, both ways. So we you can do 9x16. We have a lot of flexibility there, but we're not as perfect as we want. But we do what we can. The interface, it's really hard to do huge panoramas, but we can do XPan. So it's we focus on it.
So it sounds like you built what everyone wishes Instagram was.
I think there's some of that. I think the only part that we don't have and where the comparison drops off is that people want all the audience distribution they used to have from Instagram. And I think that's something that when you're a community that's a paid for subscriber-based community, it's very difficult to give you massive audience. We can give you incredible community and authenticity. And I think that's something that is very challenging to build at massive scale. But that's pretty special. And that's one of the things that is really hard to communicate externally until you come try us out and use it. And Scott's the one who recommended us, is an incredible member. And I think he gets that feeling. And that's been a lot of years of building. And that's one of the things that happens when you launch something like this, is that you have to commit to building a community over a certain number of years before it starts to really get that momentum. And it really is. And you can see it growing now, and it's been rewarding, and we're really happy about it.
So how would you describe kind of your perfect customer avatar? Who is Glass built for?
I would say it's built for, there's three, let me make sure I get this right. I wrote it down because I was I wanted to make sure I hit each one. But there's photographers. So obviously it's if you're a professional photographer, you can get a lot out of the platform, both from just a portfolio, kind of mini portfolio experience, to also connecting with other photographers. Often a lot of photographers want to market some of their services, or maybe they're doing workshops or whatnot. There's a ton of audience there for that. And we allow for self-promotion. We don't allow you to go crazy with it, but that's really great. But then I would say the majority of people are the photography enthusiasts. You've got this amazing camera, you want to learn, you want to grow, you want to get better. And then there's, I would call the fans, or people who just love photography, who just want to come check it out. We have a viewer account. It's pretty limited, but people can come and check it out. And there's also public profiles, so you can just obviously go check everything out. But the sweet spot is the enthusiast, but we find photographers who really love us, and they love to connect with those other audiences. And then and then sometimes we get the super fans who just love to view photography. But usually if they're that, they end up kind of becoming enthusiasts and want to do it themselves.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I mean, I fit squarely within several of those buckets myself, and everything you said sounds pretty amazing. I have the curse and or experience of having been around pretty much all the major photography platforms that have been put out there, Flickr, like you said, in the early days. I was big time on Flickr for a long time, and then Smug Mug bought Flickr and promised all these things and never delivered on really much of what they were saying they were going to do. Of course, Instagram, we've kind of already talked about that. And then you have, back in the day, 500px, which was all algorithm driven, and people found ways to manipulate the algorithm so that they could get on popular, and then it just turned into the massive popularity contest. So how is Glass different than kind of what has already been seen in the platform space for photographers?
Well, I think there's you hit on the bit about algorithm manipulation, and we don't do that, so that makes a big difference. We de-emphasize, we call them, instead of likes. So I'm a product designer by trade, and so that means designing. I design checking in for for Facebook when I was there, like that verb when you used to like check into places, like that was a whole thing. So we went different and we designed something called appreciations, and they're similar to likes. They're not that different, but we wanted to give them something else. It uses the sparkle, like the light, kind of emoji, although that now is a little AI focused, unfortunately, but we did it first. But the idea is to like encourage you. So it's all private. So when you like or appreciate something, it only goes to the photographer. It's not like count driven and you see them everywhere. And this was before now people have allowed you to hide likes, but all that was feeding an algorithm to show you more stuff. So that's one big thing. We also really emphasize the community and comment section. Because it's a paid for service, people feel a lot more comfortable really commenting and feeling good about the comments and then starting to feel like they're part of this community instead of commenting for distribution and just trying to get out there. And so sort of unpacking or unwiring your brain for those sorts of things, that sort of, I want to get and push myself bigger and bigger audiences. We just don't feel like we can compete there. There's like billions of dollars being spent to give you your attention and focus on that stuff. And we make incredible shares, like open graph shares to like put your photography out on Blue Sky to Mastodon to X to wherever you feel like you need to distribute it. Facebook, you got it. We can do it. Like, but that's their game to play. The nice part is we have these beautiful new objects, which I want to talk about a lot, which are series. So think of them as like an ongoing dynamic album. Like if you could create a photo book, but then keep adding to it over time if you wanted. And then whenever you add to it over time, it repopulates itself back up into the feed that people you're following. So then they can see the new stuff and then go back and check out your full object. It's also a beautiful grid. We launched it just a month ago, losing track of time. And it's been like extremely well received. It's one of our biggest launches, and we're just so happy to finally get it out there for everybody. So it's a pretty different object. And so both like series, appreciations, just like our whole business model. You mentioned in your questions about this stuff, you mentioned like Vero. And I don't want to slam on competitors or anything, but like we don't really see them as competitors. But it's like, oh, we're free. But I'm like, they have all this venture capital money that's been funding this free, and they're going to be free forever. But like, I don't really understand how that works long term, because it just so these things are there's even Visco who's tried this, but they raised so much venture capital that now they have to pivot to find the new market, whereas we're just what we say we built. And I think that's really important, and to express that commitment to photographers over the long haul.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally have a lot of experience in venture capital space, but I'm guessing that once you take on that money, you kind of become beholden to the funder in terms of they want a return on that investment, right? So
yes.
That means that in some ways you're going to have to monetize the product that you've created. And when we think about social media networks, like, you are the product, like the user is the product, whereas something like what you've created, it's like Glass is the product and you're the user. So like it's a completely different dynamic.
It changed the entire game. Like it's like we have a feedback board, and I think you asked me earlier, like, what is that? What do you got? How much do you build off that feedback? Well, how do you use it? What do you do with it? And like, I would say 95% of what we've been building over the last 3 years is based off of that feedback board. Like we get to, it's such a privilege. So like I said, I worked at these big tech companies, and like, it's a lot about getting your focus and getting eyeballs and attention, and how we have to, the algorithm needs to be there to keep you engaged and keep you focused. We don't have that requirement, and it's very freeing. We get to, oh, you want us to build better EXIF editing? Let's look into it. Like that's the like how do we do this? Like you want better camera pages and lens pages? Let's build it. Like we can do those things, and there's no upside for an Instagram or any company to focus on that if you're just trying to focus on intention and retention of eyeballs like on your platform. So it's great. And it's something that gets me excited every day to keep working on Glass, because I get to work directly for the people that are paying us money. It's a very straightforward business proposition. There's no like third party ad revenue service that I need to focus on to balance. I can give you an example that's like fairly funny. I mean, it's what it is, but like people complain all the time that the like for you or algorithm tab on like Meta's products is never sticky. Like you change it back to the following feed and then it goes right back to for you when you log back in. Like it doesn't stay where you want it to. And there's a big reason for that, is that it's way more addictive and focused if you can continue to get that algorithmic feed on those people's eyeballs, because they won't, if you use the following feed, you're going to lose those people. And so like they're going to lose those eyeballs. But so there's this cost incentive to do the right thing by like giving people what they want, but they're going to lose money. So they're going to opt to try to split that UI atom. you can't, and so you just can't win there. Like, and I think that's really frustrating. And yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, from the user experience side of things, there's obviously so many things that I see people complaining about all of the time when it comes to Instagram, Facebook, in terms of, distribution, like we were discussing. A lot of people are like, I put my photos out there and I used to get hundreds and hundreds of people commenting and liking and blah, 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 blah. Now I'm lucky if I get, 15 or 20 people that see my stuff. That's a problem for people. The other problem people are having is like, they're constantly changing the algorithm. So what you see happening is people chase the algorithm. So they're like, well, instead of posting my photographs, I'm going to post reels of my photographs and like stuff like that. That's just like the followers don't really want to see that, but like you're sacrificing a little bit of authenticity to kind of like placate the way that the platform is manipulating people to behave on the platform. And none of it feels good is I guess what I'm trying. And then you have like the, okay, well, it's reels and it's phone driven, so all the videos have to be 9:16 vertical, which most people like, you photograph you pick a video with your DSLR, you're not doing it like this, I promise. Nope. You're doing it like this. So I just feel like all of those things that you've talked about are things I hear every single person complaining about. So it's refreshing to hear that there's an alternative to that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's why we built it. And there's just a lot of differences there. I mean, I think sure people would love, the reach of Instagram circa 2012 with all the photograph features and everything, but like there isn't a way to build that. Like we hear people talk about how there are, at least I haven't seen it yet. Maybe there is, maybe someone can like bootstrap a giant, I just don't think it's feasible. I think you have to make choices, and I think the choices that we've made are turning out to be great. And it's an explicit choice. We had to be focused on our niche, but we're really happy to do it. Have no plans to add video to Glass. Like we, there's not like it's just.
Thank you.
It's just very focused on on that. And yeah, I mean, I deal with it. I mean, we're promoting Glass on all these platforms, right? To try to like let people know, and like, I should make sure I do a reel instead of a regular post, or make sure the stories are only going to go to our audience. There's good reasons for why they do this. They're competing with people like TikTok. So like, Instagram doesn't want to lose to that. So they need to focus their attention, and they look at the numbers and they look at the graphs, and they're focusing on it. And it's a macro level. So it's not, they're coming after photographers. It's just that they want to grow their platform in a different way. And to me, that's an opportunity.
Yeah. So let's talk about a new user for Glass. They sign up to become a member. What advice would you have in terms of maximizing the user experience as a new user and becoming a part of the community? And also, I'm like, hey, how do I get people to look at my stuff too? Like, what advice do you give to people there?
I mean, this is a great question. This is like my favorite question, because I'm constantly trying to make this better on Glass, and we're working on it. I would say it's my primary focus always, discovery and focus on growth, and but also just like what makes it a great experience for new members. And it's kind of simple, and it seems trite. This is what I tell people every time is comment. Find photographers that inspire you and comment on them, and comment on why you like them and give them some authentic comments, and then upload some of your best work. And like members who do that take off. Like they just like we had a new member who's just become extremely popular. Like just people seem to love him. His name's Julian. I think he was recommended by someone, and all of a sudden I was like, man, Julian's everywhere. Like it's just kind of fun in the community. And he did those two things. Like he uploaded incredible work, and then he started commenting on other photographers, and then those photographers saw him, and then it creates a bond and a connection. And I think it's just, it seems so basic, but we don't comment like in authentic ways on social media anymore. And we're a social network, we're a community, and it's different. And so I think you have to just kind of remember to do that again. And like, think of, if you're older, like myself, or maybe you, Matt, I don't know, you look young still.
Yeah, it's an illusion.
Yeah, like those internet forums, or just like, kind of that authentic, like, I'm going to just put myself out there a bit. It feels really safe space with like Glass. You feel really connected. And I don't know. And that's because of the subscription, and because it's not algorithmically generated feeds and chasing the algorithm and trying to like, I don't know. You can use it that way, I guess. But we see people like that kind of fail. And the thirst traps don't really work, right? You don't get a lot of promotion that way. It's kind of great. And so like that's the way I would recommend people to really get into it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm guessing you get some people who are so used to the way that other platforms operate that they kind of go into it with that mindset where they, I'm thinking back to the old 500px days where like people would literally like, there was a funny thing people would always post like, I like your photo, come look at mine, or something stupid like that.
Yes, they like follow for like, or like you get this like dynamic that we try to avoid. I mean, it can happen, but we've spent a lot of time trying to disincentivize that sort of behavior. We don't have algorithmic explore suggestions right now. Like we're considering ways to make that efficient and effective. We want to make the discovery mechanisms even better for photographers. So things like, I'm really interested in these types of photography, so then we could show you more of that stuff you want, but to give you explicit control. We have a hard red line of never doing like your following feed, having any algorithmic manipulation there. So like you follow, you see the people you follow chronologically. Like that's just a hard rule, but helping you discover new content when you want to be inspired and things are always ways in which we're trying to improve the platform. Yeah,
one of the things that I noticed when I was taking a little deep dive into the website that I thought was really fascinating is that you have, and you had mentioned this earlier, but you have these sections where you can actually look at photos that were taken with certain cameras and certain lenses, or different themes or different keywords. And I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about how you've seen your members leverage that way of organizing the photography on the site to improve their own photography, or to learn, or like how are people using that part of the site?
What I see it the most, and there's like different ways everyone uses it. Like some people will use like, I'm interested in this camera. Maybe I want to go buy a camera. So they go like to the camera sections, and then they'll like check out the photos that were taken with that camera, and they find that. But where I find the most exciting part about learning or growing is when they go to a photo and it's taken with a particular camera, and normally you wouldn't know what camera it is. And people can, strip the EXIF data. So it's all just red data that you've uploaded to Glass, and then we link it up. And that sounds really easy and basic, and I don't want to get too much into it, but I want to, if my co-founder listens to this podcast, huge shout out to the tools we've built to make that work. It's extremely complicated. The lens manufacturers and camera manufacturers are terrible with this data. They're not consistent, and then people can edit it in Lightroom, and like there's a whole slew with it. It gets crazy.
Yep.
But we've done a lot of work behind the scenes to like make it all connect, and we don't need to get into it. But what will happen is these members will like, is that the new Q343? How do you like it, right? Like, and then they start asking questions about it, or how do you like shooting with the GR3X, or like, they just. And then they'll like, wow, that like lens is like the depth of field you'll get with that lens is incredible. Like, which do you like? What do you, it's like a, big like 400 millimeter, like what is something crazy, like they're doing something really cool with it. And that's been cool to see people do. And then the discussion sort of happens within the comments. And I think it's just because it's right there. Like you just see it and it's right there. And then you can click through and see stuff. We actually have plans and we're working on some stuff and it's going to be a little ways out. I don't want to like give away, but we're working on making those camera pages and maybe eventually lens pages more robust so you can learn more about those tools, like right in glass itself. Because I've found myself and others feel, you click in and you see all these amazing photos, but you're like, what's the specs on this lens? What's going on with this thing? Or what's like, and you kind of want to know a little bit more. And so it kind of leads you to, of course we might do some affiliate links, we don't want to get too crazy with stuff, but it's like, I think people would understand like why we're trying to like give you more information about these cameras and lenses. But that's been generally how people do it. It's really cool to see. It gets me those are the ones where my heart gets big and I'm all excited and I'm like, look, it's working, like that's the, the moment.
Yeah. Along those same lines, I'd be curious to hear you talk more about any other aspects of the community or the platform where you kind of get the big heart feeling where you just feel really proud and excited about what you've built.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, the authentic connection is just the one that makes me so excited. Like when I've worked in this space for 15 years now, Matt. Like I've been designing, 2009 is when I started working for Facebook, and I've been designing software products for longer than that. But the authentic connection seems to be rarer and rarer online these days. And so when I see members just being really like open and honest and talking about something, or maybe going a little outside of photography, but still keeping it really like personal and nice, it makes me feel like we've created this space that's unique and rare. And I just get really pumped about it because, so when I started at Facebook, it was 2009. And the idea that putting your real name and your like one account to one real person, like ID verified account, was very unique and new to the online spaces. It was like, handles everywhere. Everyone was like anonymous. How do you trust anyone on the internet? And the assumption we had at that time was that was going to make for better discourse online. Because, internet forums have had trolls forever. Like people are just like, it's going to be really bad. Turns out though, people will still be jerks even if their name's attached to there's not a good online discourse since then, right? Like it hasn't become wonderful but I do think there's something about when people are paying for the service, when they're like, right, that changes the dynamic. And I'm convinced that we might be onto something there. I mean, it restricts growth. It doesn't build this giant, huge community that's like global and massive, but it is global and it is solid. And we're like really excited about that. And it allows you to connect in really special ways. And so when I see our members do that, it just makes me excited, because it's kind of silly to spend a little bit of money to just be a jerk. Like I just don't like, there's no, yeah. I don't like why are you you're in it for a reason. And so you kind of that commitment. And so it makes a big difference. And that's also when I get really excited. We've had some members meet up too. So like to get, I'm like, oh, look at you guys are doing a photo. We've done some photo walks ourselves. Like we've organized some. I'd like to see more of those. We'd like to support more like in-person photo walks or experiences. I'm hoping, some of the photographers who run courses and things do them and kind of, get more members out into the real world. I'm kind of passionate about getting people from behind the screen all the time. I do work on these spaces. But photography doesn't get made sitting there in front of the computers clicking around. So
unless you're into AI. That's
a
whole other thing.
We can get it. This is like, we're not we're really a community. And I think it's a good space for that. Like we don't do the artificial community members. It's real people, real connections. So
that kind of leads me to another question that I didn't think of before around AI, because one of the big debates right now in photography, especially landscape photography for some reason, is and you see it in portraiture and you see it in a lot of spaces, but like people who will go into AI and they will create a photograph and it looks pretty damn good, and then they upload it and they're like, like Facebook groups are notorious for this. They're just full of this stuff where it's people upload something and it's like, this is my photograph. And then, of course, everyone's like, this is amazing. What an amazing photo. And then it turns out later, like, it's AI. Do you guys have any safeguards or like how do you guys handle that problem?
Yeah. So we do have some, and we're actually actively looking at building more of them. My co-founder's got some some more ways to do it. We don't allow any AI scraping of photos. Like we have it blocked. So like if they come through, I mean, who knows what they did before they allowed blocking, right? Like the big large language models did a lot of sucking up of things on the internet without people's knowledge. But yes, so we do a lot of that. We also have, reporting directly from members, so like that helps quite a bit. There's a lot of self-policing out there, and we're not a fan of it. So we're working towards removing it or keeping it off the platform. Generally speaking, we want to keep authentic photography on the platform, and there's AI improvements or manipulation to an image, but I think the idea that it starts with a moment in time and a photo is taken, that's pretty important for us. Like that there's use that chronology.
Preach, my brother. Yes.
And I like this has been a bit, we're very busy and there's only 3 of us who work on this. Just to give you an idea of the sense of like, there's not a massive team. I'm the co-founder and CEO, but there is CTO and my other co-founder. And then we have one, Joao, who works on the iOS and iPad app. And that's it. That's the team. That's us. So yeah, it's small. we a lot. But Stefan is working on, or had some ideas around more AI image recognition. So that helps us like either take it off or prevent it before it gets on the platform. And one of the things that does help quite a bit is the EXIF data stuff. So because we can see. The image is a lot more authentic when we've read the EXIF data. Sure, it could be fake. Sure, someone could go through the extra effort. But generally speaking, if you're just casually creating images with AI, you're not going to have any of that lens data. And some people strip their authentic photos off too. But yeah, with accuracy, I think we're going to get to a point where we can just police it pretty well. So
yeah. So given the fact that your team is small and you'd mentioned you're very customer focused, and you have some member policing of some of these things. How do you guys deal with member conflict, or when someone reports or a bunch of people report an image, or I don't know, like Facebook, Instagram? It's incredibly frustrating for most people right now, where it's like you could literally have 1,000 people report something for being fake or misleading or whatever, and nothing happens. And so, how do you guys deal with that stuff?
Well, because to be frank, I mean, our scale is very different, right? Like we are tiny in comparison. Like number of members, it can be small team like us and a high touch environment, which is great. But the reason is that it's a paying service, so like you get that authenticity right away. We could scale up quite a bit and still handle the volume of support and reporting in the platform. We're still good size, but the way we can make it all work, the financial way you do this is by being so small. We don't have huge bills, right? There's just the 3 of us to pay for, so that allows us to keep going and building. And I remember when I started, I think I mentioned this like at the beginning, like, I was 2012 when I wanted to do this. The internet's come a long way in terms of infrastructure to be able to build something like this with a very small team. And like those things just couldn't happen, just from like Amazon Web Services to host images to like, we can do so much with just very few people. And even with, artificial intelligence that helps us like on the coding side and just in the like the structuring side, that helps us build a lot of things. We do have AI powered search, and I want to mention this just because it's really amazing. It doesn't read your images or strip them, and it's complicated, and I don't want to get into too much about how it works, but it uses semantic search to do that. And we have a website, a post, you can dig into the technical details of it. Stefan built it. It's amazing. But you can search for things like Wes Anderson, and you get photographs that look like in Wes Anderson's style. And like, so it's really cool. And it's one of these things. So if you go to our Explore tab, and you can see this without even signing up, you can go to glass.photo, and right on the homepage, there's some suggestions. You can search in the search box, and you can see like all these different types of photography. And it's really, really fun. And like the idea that we can build that with 3 people is insane to me, but that's only happened in the last, like since we started the project, that we could offer this amazing search. Like we launched 3 years ago, there was there was nothing. There weren't even categories. We had EXIF data, but it was bad and messy, and like, so it's come a long way. Now we have this amazing search, Explorer. We've got categories. We've got series. We're on iPads. We've got on Android now. We're on the iPhone, on the web. We didn't have the web before, so like, the big full screen versions. It's great. So like it's just been able to put in the time. These things just take a while, and you can just kind of feel the momentum. This is the product we wanted to have when we were launching, but it takes when you're small, you don't get to take on millions of dollars of venture capital and build all this stuff up front. You have to like do it slow and steady.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then maybe talk a little bit about the user community. Like, are we talking 100 members, 1,000 members, 1,000,000 members? Like, what are we looking at?
What's the scale? We're thousands, so it's not millions. So I just like keep it in the thousands. So it's we're looking, we'd love to get to tens of thousands, but we're like that's the scale right now. So it's not a huge, like that's what I said. We knew we were never going to build you're not going to get this huge audience by being part of Glass. You're going to be part of this amazing community of members, and the like both the appreciations, but like the community, the interactions you get with the community are some of the best parts about being part of it. I do want to say there is some single player benefits. Like you get your profile is incredible, so you get like this beautiful profile. The images are high quality. We do the least amount of compression as possible. We try to make sure everything looks really, really great. And so that sort of thing is really important to us. And so those things allow you to like have a great little place to put up, hey, go to glass.photo/Matt, and you've got your little mini like place to store stuff. You can pin, you can hide your photos. You can have series now where you can, showcase your various different things. And it's pretty great. And I think that's like a real nice thing. And the price is we feel like quite reasonable for all the features that you get for all that stuff. Yeah,
maybe touch on that real quick.
Oh yeah, sorry. So it's $39.99 for the year. So it's a yearly subscription. So I think that's a pretty good deal. You're paying a lot of money for a lot of camera gear and a lot of stuff. Like it's pretty good deal to do that. We also offer a patron tier, which has a lot of other additional benefits. You can get free memberships to give away, but it's $130 for the year. So you get but you get 3 free memberships. You're like, oh, I've got 3 buddies who want to do it, and then you get like a badge and some custom app icons. We also do early access feature releases. So our most recent early access feature was we have a featured series area now, and so that's available just to patrons only. That'll come to everybody, but we since we just released series, all of a sudden there was all these amazing series out there. We wanted to make sure we had a spot where you could go check them out.
Yeah, and you had mentioned before we started recording that you actually have a nice special offer for our listeners.
We do. For the F-Stop listeners, we've got $10 off or 25% off. You can use the code FSTOP if you go to glass.photo and sign up, and that'll give you $10 off your first year of Glass, which is, I feel like, a pretty great thing. Yeah. Hopefully there'll be a link in the description, because the link is easy to click on too, which will take you directly there, and you can sign up using that.
That's awesome. And how active are you on the community? Like how often do you dive in there and get your hands dirty?
I am embarrassingly active in the community.
No, that's good.
I love it. Yeah. Stefan sent me the stats. I think I'm approaching 20,000 comments so far, which is kind of fun. I welcome everybody still. I love doing it. So every time I don't have enough time to do as much as I used to, because it's just, we keep growing. But I still like to welcome the people when I can. And I try to, at least in the first few days, find a great photo, give you a comment, let you know that we appreciate it. And then, so it's still pretty bespoke in that way. But what I found though is challenging is I don't post as much as I would love. I do post photos there quite often, but I end up spending so much time building it and then commenting on everybody's, and then I'm like, they, and then I get a lot of eyes on my stuff, but it's not about me. It's not about my photography. But I still do post probably maybe twice a week, but I'm much more active on the community building side, I would say. We also do we highlight members, so we do like, and we call them spotlights. Excuse me, and we try to do it once a week. Sometimes every 2 weeks or so, we'll find a great member, and we have community members sometimes help give us suggestions on members that we want to spotlight. And then we write up a little bit about them, and then we highlight their work, and then we post them to all of our social media channels as well to try to give them raise them up and just let them know throughout the community and stuff. So if you have the app, you get a push notification about this spotlight, and then that happens too. So it's a little editorial. We really, really love doing that, and I get to do that too. So that's been fun.
Yeah, no, that's cool. While you were talking about that, it prompted me to ask another question about user experience, or kind of what someone would typically go through in their experience with Glass. One of the things that I see a lot of people complain about with other platforms is like they feel like in order to feel like they're making any meaningful advancement in terms of like getting their work seen or having followers or whatever, is that they're spending a ton of time on the platform. Like I don't know if you follow God, I can't remember his first name, but he's like this big marketing guru. Last name's Patel. And he did this Threads post like maybe a year ago now. And it was talking about like we analyzed millions and millions of accounts on Facebook and Instagram. And we determined the ideal amount of times that you need to be posting in order to maximize growth. And it was something insane. Like you have to do a Facebook Live 4 times a week. Yeah. You have to post like, I don't know, like 80 posts a week, like 20 videos. I mean, and then everyone read that and they were like, who the hell is doing this stuff? Like nobody has time to do that. So I'm curious, like for like the user experience on Glass, like what do you think is kind of a sweet spot? I mean, obviously there's no requirement to do minimum or maximum, but like, what do you see kind of people getting the most out of it?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a little counterintuitive because it's like you're comparing apples and oranges, right? Like you're like, but totally. That's, I get it. Like, because you're paying for this thing, it should be enjoyable for you. It shouldn't feel like a job. This should just be a place that you go to. Like when I go to Glass, it feels good. It's a very different feeling than when you open up TikTok or Instagram or I don't know, a lot of apps on your phone these days. Like they don't feel good. You go there and you feel manipulated, or you feel addicted to scrolling or swiping or whatever. And then you go to Glass and it's like a very calming experience. We get to make something that's very different. Like you don't see all the text. It's just the photos in the main feed when you scroll. You can swipe on the iPhone or hover on the desktop and you'll see the information about the photographer. And you click through to comment or to give it an appreciation for it. It kind of feels slow all of a sudden. It feels relaxing. And I think that's something, and you can feel really inspirational. And I think that's like kind of great. So you can spend a lot of time trying to optimize Glass and get more people to look at your stuff. But I don't think that's going to give you enjoyment. I think that's just going to make you feel a little bummed out. You're giving us money to get to connect with these people, and maybe you're going to connect with them outside of Glass, and you're going to go on a photo walk, or maybe you're going to meet up, or maybe you're just going to connect and love their photography, and then you can bookmark it and save it for later and be inspired. And those are just different. I just don't want to compete on that other stuff. Like, oh, I need to be spending all this. And like some people aren't going to want that. They're going to want to build their audiences and grow their businesses. And I respect and get that thing. And you can help grow your business, especially if you're like marketing to photographers. Like Glass has that option for you if you want to find other photographers there. But it's not really what it's geared towards or focused on. It's for the love of photography.
I love the way you just put that, and the emphasis being on the photographs and the photography and not on other ways people are trying to get your attention and things like that. So I think that's a nice way of contrasting what your platform is versus what other platforms people are more used to are about. Appreciate
that. It's hard to communicate that in a quick way sometimes. Like it's not an easy...
you have to experience it, right?
Yeah, it's a free 14-day trial too. So, if you want to try Glass out, there's not a commitment. I want to make sure I emphasize that to people. Probably should have put that in the earlier bit about things, but it is a free trial. So you can always come check us out. and yeah, you get that $10 off.
Love it. And you had talked a little bit about this earlier. Maybe we could go a little bit deeper on. One of the things that I noticed immediately is that you have an entire feedback section where users can put their ideas in. They can upvote other people's ideas in terms of how to improve Glass. You mentioned a couple of things that you've implemented that have come directly from that. I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about maybe like what are a couple things coming down the pipeline that you're excited to implement that are based on what users suggested, and maybe what are a couple things that you've already implemented that were based on that?
Sure. So like, I mean, the things like series, multiple photos per post, that was like a huge member request. And I want to just like, it was probably our top request the whole time. I mean, there was also like people wanted photography categories. Some people wanted tags. We had to make the decision on how to like focus it more towards photography specific things. And then instead of people just spamming hashtags all over the platform, we felt like that would be the wrong incentive structure. Series, I think most people assumed we would do a carousel like Instagram. You would just, get multiple photos in one post. But then we'd be restricting on aspect ratios. So we had to like work through these problems, and like how to get a better experience in this like dynamic album was something we iterated on. But it was a direct request from members. Like they wanted these things. They wanted us to build them. We wanted to focus on it. So we built it. There's been requests around some privacy stuff. So we keep working on that. Like they want private profiles. So we're trying to figure out ways to make that work. So that's like something we've been considering a lot. The people want location much better. We really want to do that. It's something that's probably like our top thing to want to focus on. There's the want to focus on it, and then there's the things that we also need to focus on that help keep it running and building it and like going. So, but like this one is really fun because members like put my photos on a map. That'd be super fun. I've designed like Facebook places, so I know how to do all these like location stuff, and my co-founder really wants to do it. So we're trying to figure out ways to make that amazing, because I don't know if you remember this, like I think Instagram did this 2015, 2014, where they had like really good location stuff, and then all of a sudden you could like see where all these photos were taken and then maybe find good locations to go take photos. But now all it is influencers, and people like every location is just people like, I don't like, doing the duck face with the selfie, and like they're just in front of that location. But I think if we had a photography focused community that you could see the location of the photos that they've taken, then we could really build something great around that project. I mentioned the camera and lens stuff. That's something we're actually actively working on and trying to make better. And I can't wait to see where that goes. People constantly have asked for better discovery, and that's like the thing that I was talking about with our explore section. And so we're working towards that. Previously, people were like, where's your iPad app? Made an iPad app. Instagram doesn't have an iPad app. We got an iPad app. Like there's like, things like that we can just prioritize. I know why they don't have an iPad app. I mean, there's a couple reasons, but like it just doesn't have a lot of members like or users on the platform that like use iPads. So then they just don't. I mean, there's a lot, but they're relative to their business, and they want to move fast, and so it costs. Anyway, they also are just bitter about it from Mark and Steve Jobs years ago, but that's fine. Like, anyway, I can digress, but Matt, you get what I'm saying. I'm doing a lot of fun stuff.
I do. In regards to the location stuff, I think one of the main problems that I see with location sharing on social media is that it can negatively draw attention to a location that maybe can't handle infrastructure. So that would be just one thing to think about in terms of like maybe making it optional, or I'm sure you've already thought of that, but yeah.
Definitely want to make sure people don't want to overshare someplace that they don't want to. So was one of the problems we ran into was that EXIF data had a lot of location information, and we were keeping it pretty high level. We didn't want to be too specific, and so we ended up having it initially when we launched. We pulled it back, and it's been years since we've been able to bring it forward in what we felt like was a responsible way. People just weren't realizing what they were posting, and it was, so it's a sensitive space. And I completely hear you on the like, if you want to keep that location you're taking amazing photos in secret, we want to make sure you keep it secret, and we want to make sure when you're posting that you're keeping it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I even go through the trouble of like all of my drone photos are like, you have the GPS coordinates right there in the EXIF data. Like I strip all that out. I'm like, you're not I'm not telling you where this was taken. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's like good. Like it's, but I also think sometimes people want to be like, look at where I've been. It's like, and I just, we have to balance that. But I think it's great that one of our really fun, Todd Dominey. He's on YouTube. He's a good landscape photographer. He's actually a friend of mine, and he's been a great supporter. But he's very good at stripping out all of his EXIF data stuff. His photos are gorgeous, but I'm always like, I wonder where that is, and like you just don't know. And that's kind of part of the mystery, and I love that he does it. Like it's great. So yeah. I'm like, what camera do you use? He doesn't want to share. That's fair. You do you. Like we offer all that too. So it's like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I think as long as you give the user the choice, I think that works great. So.
It's generally how we feel too.
Yeah. I mean, I just can't tell you how refreshing it is to talk to someone who actually cares about the user experience over, monetization and selling ads and all of that stuff. I mean, that's the biggest frustration I have with all the other platforms is that they don't really care about the user experience at all.
So because I worked at these places and I know these people and I don't want to they have just very bluntly two different masters. They have they want to do right by their members or the users. So I'm very explicit about saying members because I feel like the only time you use users is drug dealers. So it's that's what and I'm when we talk about Glass, we talk about members. But when we're talking about other platforms, we can say users all we want. They're listening to them, but they're like, yeah, but we need to make money. And we need to do so we got to do this way, or we need to make, and it's a lot of money. It's corporate, it's capitalism to the max. And so one of the things about that is you're gonna hurt the experience that users want in order to make more engagement or ultimately more profit. And we're a for-profit company. We're not against that, but because of the relationship we designed. That's why I go back to this a lot. I feel like I'm a broken record with it, but the not taking venture capital, by requiring a subscription, Glass can be a very different product, and I can design and build the product and service around those wants and needs. So that's the cost, but it's the only way that I can see to get around it. There could be some, ways in which we can like affiliate links or a few other ways to monetize things that we can feel are right, but I don't want to stray too far from that relationship because it's incredibly important to keeping the business running in a way that's healthy and that relationship healthy.
I love that. All right. Last question. Who do you recommend our listeners learn more about? And I think you've got a couple of people directly from Glass.
I do. So there's 3 members that I want to highlight. They're incredible members on the platform. Amanda Powell, Marcus Nadi Yarvi, I want to make sure I get that right, and then Molly Carstater, and I think she's just Molly on Glass. But the 3 of them are great photographers. They have presences outside of Glass, but they're also just incredibly great community members. They're just good people, and so I think you should check those people out.
I love that you're highlighting people because they're good people. That's awesome.
I mean, we could highlight, their photography is amazing. Marcus lives in northern Sweden. I think Molly's on the East Coast and Amanda lives on the West Coast of the United States, Washington State. And they're just, you get different moods, vibes. Their work's really great. Amanda does incredible portraits, self-portraiture, but then also really great landscape work and just fantastic work. Marcus does some just, I don't know how to describe it, his dark, moody, light, industrial Sweden feel is just something.
I was gonna say that sounds like Sweden.
Right, right. So it's Sweden, and then Molly's just prolific in a way that's sort of overwhelmingly fun. Film, she's just on a film kick, and her series are just nonstop rolls of film, and they're just fun and different and very, very there's gems in there, and then there's just sometimes it's just a stream of stuff, but it's really fun, and I like all 3 of their work a lot, and I think it's just really inspiring. But the best part is that they're some of my favorite community members. Like they just, they participate. They're not pretentious. They're just like there and having a good time. And like you can see the communities and circles building. And then you run into ones, I'm like, I didn't even know this community existed outside of these people that I know, and I want to find more of those pockets throughout the platform, and we do our best to try to do it. One final note, we're really kind of aggressive about not tracking people. And I wanted to mention that if people made it all the way to the end of this podcast. A lot of social media right now is all about hoovering up your data so we can target our advertising to it and like really focus in on who you are and what you're doing all the time and tracking how many seconds you've stared at that one video to then target the next video for you. We just don't do any of that. We do track like high level metrics just to make sure we're keeping the platform healthy, but I don't, if you, Matt Payne, signed up for Glass, I wouldn't know, how many this or that about you. We want to, have a little bit of data so we can give you a better experience, but we don't really track any of that right now. And I think it's something unique in the space and something that people would often appreciate, just that rarity in online spaces these days.
Yeah, it's a big deal for a lot of people. I mean, in some ways, I've become kind of lazy about that because I just know that's how it all works.
Yeah.
And as a person, I mean, I occasionally will advertise on Meta, which for my photography competition, because it's the only way to get new eyeballs.
Yep. I get it.
And like that wouldn't work if they're not tracking people's data. So like it's a painful for me to say, like, I'm sort of glad they track the data, but also it's gross. It's
both those things at once, right? Like, I mean, I worked there. I mean, I'm not immune to knowing how this all works. It's just unique. You get to do something different. And I think that's something that's been really fun. So I just want to highlight it because I don't want to totally, negate the, surveillance capitalism is for what it is what it is these days. It's just kind of the world we live in and swim in. But yeah, Glass doesn't do that. And I think that's pretty special, at least right now. We don't have any plans to. Just want to, but I just, yeah.
That's great. Well, Tom, this has been super fun. I learned a lot about Glass, and hopefully our listeners and or viewers will take a peek at what Glass is and join the community.
That's awesome. Thank you, Matt. We had a great time. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, thanks for joining me for another great episode. A huge thank you to Tom Watson for sharing the story behind Glass. It's really exciting to see a platform built specifically for photographers that truly values creativity, connection, and community. And here's a special treat for my listeners. Tom and the team at Glass are offering you $10 off your first year, an amazing 25% discount. To take advantage of this offer, visit glass.photo/offer/fstop or use the code fstop when signing up at glass.photo. Before we go, I want to remind you that this podcast operates on the value for value model, which means we rely on your support to keep it alive. If this episode brought value to your photography journey, I'd love it if you could give some value back. You can do that in a number of ways. First of all, by joining our amazing community of supporters at Patreon, on Patreon at patreon.com/fstopandlisten. Every contribution helps cover the costs of producing the show and ensures that I can continue to bring you insightful conversations like the one we had today. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.